Today you will be taking notes on the United States joining World War II. Our big question is, why did the US get involved? And like with everything else that we're doing, you're going to be looking to evaluate, was the United States justified in getting involved in this war? So take a moment and make sure to refresh your memory on what the word justified means. This will be really important for you to remember as you're going through and evaluating our actions. As a brief overview to World War II, just a reminder, most likely from your World Studies class, the war begins with Germany as a result of Hitler attacking European countries. If you remember from your World Studies class, Hitler had been continually taking over different areas in Europe, and Britain and France had been appeasing him, where they would tell him, Hitler, please stop invading, and then he would say, okay, I promise, and then he would continue to do it, and the British and French weren't taking any actions. And I think we can understand why. They were a little afraid after what happened in World War I. Well, eventually, Hitler did invade Poland, and that was the last straw. So on September 1st, 1939, as Hitler was trying to attempt to conquer all of Europe to create a larger empire, the British and French said enough is enough. And so at this point, World War I does begin. So a very brief overview of World War II. What we see here is just looking at the two sides. And what I really want you to look at here is, who was on what side? Who do we think had more of an advantage? And with this, the Allied forces, the side that we are on, they were able to go in and actually surround Germany and reconquer the lost territory. To begin, when looking at this war, just like in World War I, the Americans tried to remain neutral. In 1937, a Gallup poll, so a poll taken of many Americans, they found that 2/3 of Americans thought that U.S. involvement in World War I had been a mistake. Take a minute and remind yourself, what were those reasons for World War I? The actual reason we get involved is when the Germans start to attack and sink 6 U.S. ships. But thinking back, we talked about the fact that we had lent money to the British and the Germans, and we wanted to get that back. We had been indirectly attacked with the sinking of the Lusitania. We were trying to make the world safe for democracy. There were a lot of reasons that led us into the war besides the actual sinking of our ships. And a lot of Americans looked at those and said, maybe that wasn't our place. The other major factor here is that the United States was also in the middle of their own Great Depression, which FDR, the president at the time, believed to be the nation's #1 priority. He looked at this and said, I don't think I can go and send our people off to war and get us involved in other people's problems when we have major issues here back in our own country. If you look at the cartoon on the screen, it says, ho hum, when he's finished pecking down the last tree, he'll quite likely be tired. And so if you look at it, you've got the United States kind of sitting atop our tree and assuming that after what's representing Germany and the Nazis, after they finish taking down England, they'll probably be so tired from all their other conquering that they won't come over. So there was maybe this false sense of security that we wouldn't be attacked. So what the United States did is we created the Neutrality Acts. And so with the Neutrality Acts, we had first the cash and carry, which said that we would sell weapons to any country, didn't matter who it was, as long as they did two things. One, they paid in cash so we knew we had our money, and two, they picked them up themselves. The reason they wanted us to pick them, or we wanted them to pick them up themselves is because we didn't want to be risking sending our ships across the ocean. So one, we made sure to get our money. Two, we made sure to keep our people safe. And then with the Cash and Carry Act, since we were willing to sell it to anybody, we really were trying to remain neutral. Well, by 1941, we signed the Lend-Lease Act. The wording changes a little bit here. If you look, you've got the fact that it says the U.S. could lend or lease, so borrow, any weapons to any country that was vital to the defense of the United States. So in a sense, we're starting to take sides here. If you look, it's talking about only countries who are vital to our defense. Well, think about who we would have been afraid of attacking us and who we would have wanted to help defend us. So looking at that, FDR could send weapons to the British if the government promised to pay them back or return them at the end of the war. So while it's meant to be a neutral act because we're not actually fighting, we're starting to see that we're moving a little bit more into the war. So if you see on the slide here, it says Dr. Seuss goes to war, and just showing that as we're sitting here, on this post with the neutrality axe and the beard attached to the ship that has all those supplies, in a sense, we're pulling ourselves into the war. So why did they get involved? Many people assume that the United States got involved to end the Holocaust. Well, according to Howard Zinn from A Young People's History of the United States, he says, many people thought that the reason for the war against the Axis was to end the terrible situations of Jews in German-occupied Europe. But that wasn't a chief concern of Roosevelt. While Jews were being put in concentration camps and Germany was getting ready to begin exterminating 6 million Jews and millions of other minorities and dissidents in what has come to be called the Holocaust, Roosevelt failed to take steps to save some of those doomed lives. He left it to the U.S. State Department, which did nothing. What I want you to get from this, I don't expect that you're writing down the quote. What I want you to get from this is the idea that the United States, once we did find out about it and once we were at the camps and we did liberate people, our main focus was not getting involved in the Holocaust. As it mentions here, there were actions we could have taken to save some lives that we didn't. We eventually even turned away ships from our country. So just kind of thinking about that, we don't actually get involved because of the Holocaust. It is something that we're going to help out with, but that's not our primary focus. So here's going to be where we talk about why we get involved. So if you look at this, and I would encourage you to get that chart down or at least get the information from it down. The United States, we were trading with Japan. And as of July of 1941, we were starting to put demands on Japan. We wanted them to end their control in Asian countries. Japan, of course, says no. Think about the United States. How would we have responded if Japan told us to get rid of our territories? So Japan was faced with two options. Either get out of China and continue trading with the U.S., or stay in China and figure out how to get 80% of their oil from a different country. So the United States was kind of giving them an ultimatum. Either you stop conquering other places and you can keep trading with us, or keep conquering and we're cutting you off. Well, of course, Japan's going to refuse. They don't want us telling them what they can or cannot do. So, as a result of their denial, as a result of them denying our request to get out of China, we froze all Japanese assets, meaning any money that was in the United States, any assets that we had control over, we froze them, meaning that Japan did not have access to their money. For 6 months, the U.S. and Japan attempted to negotiate terms for trade that would please both sides. So think about if you were Japan at this time. The United States has told you have to get out of your territory or stop conquering. And we have now pushed it even further and said you can't have access to your money. What would you do? Well, the Japanese end up attacking the United States. So on December 7th, 1941, at 7:48 a.m., Japanese dive bombers surprise attacked the United States fleet. They end up destroying 18 ships, 350 planes, 2,400 are dead, and 1,178 are wounded. Just thinking of those effects. You will be watching some clips from the movie Pearl Harbor to take a look at what the effects of the attack actually looked like. But I want you to think through, what would you do? You're the leader of the nation at this time. You found out that we've been attacked. What would you do? President Roosevelt addresses Congress the next day, and he does ask for a declaration of war against Japan. You'll see this clip of the declaration of war in the movie Pearl Harbor, and I really want you to listen to the words that he's saying. As a result of Roosevelt's request for war, Congress does declare war. Only one member voted against it, and the U.S. was now officially in World War II on the side of the Allies, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. And we were fighting against the Axis powers, Japan, Germany, and Italy. And I would just like for you to take a moment at the end of your notes to jot down a reflection. What would you have done at that point? Would you have declared war? Say you were a member of Congress, which way would you have voted? And that is it.